Hi everyone, my name is Kendall Hall, and the topic that I chose to present is reading comprehension, and this is for the University of New England online. So the topic that I'm going to talk about is comprehension. Comprehension is the ability to read text, process it, and understand its meaning. If readers can read the words but do not understand or connect to what they are reading, they are not really reading. I know sometimes I'll read a page in a textbook and just sit there in disbelief because I just completely forgot or didn't understand one thing and I am sure that I am not the only one that has that happen to them before. How does comprehension relate to my focus student? So my focus student is reading at a lower elementary school level, and he's at the 4th grade reading level, and he's a high school junior. He struggles with reading and answering questions and comprehending of what he just read about. He also needs extra support, whether it's from the teacher or the classroom aide in my classroom, and he is often unmotivated to read and concentrate on readings. So this slide is going to talk about some of my own classroom strategies for differentiated instruction. So the first one is small class size, and it is an 8-1-1 classroom, so that means at one time there is 8 students in a class with 1 teacher and 1 classroom aide. And the students who I'm teaching right now are mostly emotionally disturbed. The next bullet talks about preferred seating. In my classroom there is no seating chart. The students get to pick wherever they want to sit, and we have a few study corrals in our classroom which have walls around them which are minimizing distractions for the students that need to use them. Teacher and teacher aide support. Since there's such a small class size and there's 2 adults in the room, it is a lot easier for students to get the support that they do need, which they may not be getting in their general education classrooms. Differentiated class lecture notes. So some of these notes can include some fill in the blanks, others have simplified notes, or some others that cannot pay attention for the whole class will get the entire PowerPoint handed right to them so they do not have to fill out anything. Differentiated assignments. This can include the questions and worksheets that we give in class. Some may only have 1 question, while some others may have 5 or 10. Some may already have some filled out, or they may have graphic organizers to help them, or using visuals, whatever the case may be to support each student. And finally, quizzes and tests are differentiated to meet the needs of each student, whether they have extra time on the quizzes and tests, or they have different quizzes and tests, or some of them may verbally answer questions, which they have a hard time writing things down. Whatever the case may be, we provide a lot of strategies for each student in our classroom to succeed. So the 3 strategies for comprehension that I'm going to talk about today is number 1, story structure, number 2, the stop and think theory, or asking questions, and number 3, the use of visuals. So the first strategy, number 1, story structure. And students learn to identify the categories of content, so the characters, setting, events, problems, and resolutions. Students learn to recognize story structure with the use of story maps, which I will be talking about later when it comes to the assessments. So Duke et al. 2008 explains a 3-step strategy for teachers wanting to use a strategy of story structure. Number 1 is modeling, number 2 is guided practice, and number 3 is independent practice. So going back to number 1, modeling, the teacher will fully model the strategy for the student. Once the teacher feels like the student understands the strategy, they will go on to number 2, which is guided practice. The student and the teacher will work together to identify the categories of the content of which they are reading. And finally, number 3, independent practice. The student itself will then just identify the categories of content. Students will begin to recognize parts of the stories under discussions that fill each category. And that quote was from N. Duke, 2008, on page 113. Our next strategy is the stop and think, and that is also the generating questions. So the stop and think, and this quote is from Baker et al., 2008, defines the stop and think strategy as making inferences while reading text out of a book or online. And basically they want you to make predictions while reading. And generating questions. The author Adler from Reading Rockets 2017 suggests that students become aware whether they can answer questions and if they understand what they are reading. And then students learn to ask themselves questions that require them to combine information from different segments of text. And our final strategy is visuals. Again, Duke et al. 2008 state that a visual display helps readers understand, organize, and remember some of those 1,000 words, and that was on page 112. And also, again, Duke et al. 2008 expresses that visual representations are representations. They allow us to present information again, and that was on 112 also. An example of a visual often used with my focus student is a graphic organizer. It is stated in my focus student's IEP that he needs to use a graphic organizer when writing information, whether it be essays, paragraphs, or a short answer question for a test. So if he's using it for writing, I think that he would definitely benefit for using graphic organizers when reading too. And graphic organizers illustrate concepts and relationships between concepts in a text. Adler, 2017, suggests that graphic organizers can help students focus on text structures as they read, provide students with tools they can use to examine and show relationships in text, and finally, help students write well-organized summaries of text. So now we're going to talk about how I can use these 3 strategies in my differentiated classroom. And everyone is different and learns in a different way, and that is completely true in my case and my students' cases. So why is our school system still teaching all students the same way and preparing them all for the same test in the general education classrooms? So some ways to differentiate instruction using the 3 selected strategies for my focus learner. So the first one, story structure. We can provide support, which would be me or my classroom aide. We would give the student extra time, and we would give him a simplified task. Maybe it would only be filling out 2 of the questions rather than all of the questions. The next one, stop and think or answering questions. So we could provide questions for the student so he didn't have to make his own questions up. We can provide support when making predictions, so either myself or my teacher aide would be able to do that. And he could also read with a partner or the classroom aide to help ensure that he is getting everything that he needs out of the text. We can make simplified text for him or make bigger fonts or smaller fonts or colored, whatever he may need. And finally, reading on a laptop instead of paper. Our school district provides Chromebooks for each of the students, so maybe if he could read on the laptop instead of the paper, that would benefit him. And finally, the visuals. We could have simplified worksheets for him. We always can give him support when completing graphic organizers. We would offer minimal distractions, so he could sit in a study corral where there would be 2 walls around him, or he can use his headphones and listen to music, whatever he needs to succeed. And we could also give him a partially filled in graphic organizer so he knows what to fill in. Now we're going to talk about assessment and how we can make sure that the student is actually learning. Of course, we always can use teacher observations and teacher notes, and all of the strategies mentioned before can be monitored by teacher observations and notes. I can also give differentiated visuals to support each and every learner in my own classroom. Author D.S. McNamara suggests many strategy assessments for comprehension, such as Venn diagrams, storyboards, cause and effect charts, and that is for the visual strategies. So a Venn diagram is used for comparing and contrasting information from two sources. A storyboard is sequencing order of events, and the cause and effect is used to illustrate the cause and effect in a text. And story mapping for the story structure strategy. Student would define the content of what type of fiction or nonfiction text that they are reading. And the other one that we could use is partner reading. Cooperative learning involves students working together as partners or small groups on tasks. It helps check for understanding with both partners, and it helps the teacher as well. And students work together to understand the text. They help each other learn and apply strategies mentioned earlier. And finally, my conclusion. Comprehension strategies, when used correctly, will help students become purposeful, active readers who are in control of their own reading comprehension. And this is my reference page, and all the web links are highlighted in black to make it easier to read. Thank you, everyone.